Hello students, I welcome you all to lecture 4 of week 3 titled The Indian Graphic Novel by Corey K. Crickmore. So this lecture is a part of an overall unit which we are doing on the introduction to Indian graphic novels, and here Corey K. Crickmore discusses in detail the emergence, form, content and various aspects of Indian graphic novel. In the previous lecture, we discussed Emma Dawson's reasoning that how post-millennial India has shaped India's graphic novels, but Crickmore differs here, or maybe he expands his horizon to various other aspects from Emma Dawson's arguments, highlighting several other reasons why Indian graphic novel, in what context, how do they differ from the West, what are the effects that leaves on their readers. All these things are discussed by Crickmore in this article. So this is an article, the Indian graphic novel is an article by Corey K. Crickmore. If you wish to have a look at it and read the full article, you may do it. Now, Indian graphic novel as the confluence of two distinct narratives, Indian comics and contemporary Indian novel. So, Crickmore's definition of Indian graphic novel is very indigenous rather than Emma Dawson's idea of Indian graphic novel, where she was situating the entire discourse of Indian graphic novel. Though, yeah, it is very true that, she was very right in her arguments that it is actually the post-millennial India that lead to this creation of graphic novels. But apart from that, additionally, comics as well as the contemporary Indian novel, literary novel also has to play a very important role in the emergence of graphic narratives, which other scholars have not paid due attention to. Indian graphic novel as the synthesis between elite literary modes and mass cultural images. So again, elite literary modes, graphic novel in the sense that the hardbound books, the classic, the highbrow novels of Salman Rushdie, and all these writers tend to have a kind of unique amalgamation with the comics, that how partition stories can be told through, because if you go to Salman Rushdie's work, he's also talking about, I'm just citing an example of Rushdie's work, it's not just that it is just Rushdie. So how Rushdie's work can very well be implemented in the comic form. If you have to tell a story of Salim Sinai, then how will you do it in the comic form? So all these questions led to the emergence of a very serious topic, a historical incident, something that includes violence of some sort, very grave violence, how it should be narrated, or what are the effects that such kind of narration will have when it is narrated through a graphic novel form. Indian graphic novels and comic books are local and national in their content and concerns. So, as I said it, the Indian graphic novels differ in their approach because rather than being transnational, or rather than being talking about other countries and their national problems, Indian graphic novel kind of focuses on the self, and it actually restricts itself with the problems, with the issues, with the concerns that are troubling India and Indians of today. Graphic novels in India employ words and idioms from Indian languages without translation, presuming that these will be accessible to their mostly South Asian readers. Now, this is also very important facet, that what Indian graphic novels, how are they different? Because graphic novels from the West are exclusively written in English because they have a global audience, because Art Spiegelman wanted to tell the story of Holocaust to the entire world. But even Indian graphic novelists, when they want to tell the story, they know it is actually mostly their own readers who are going to read these stories, and it is actually them who can actually bring about a change rather than the entire world coming together. So it is actually the graphic novels of India actually address Indians, because they know it is these very people who are going to bring about change, who are be the reason of the change. And the Indian graphic novels are ultimately trying to influence these set of readers, these set of viewers who are going to read their novel. Also, the local language, the dialects or from some particular region which are very much familiar with the people are not translated in English, because they know if translated in English they will lose its essence. So the regional basis, the regional focus, the intensity that it is only catering to Indians is very much emphasized through the form. The Indian graphic novel remains explicitly Indian in content and addresses, while its formal features are akin with those of American, European and Japanese manga. So in form it may be borrowing, but it was only true earlier that it was borrowing in form. But when you see other kinds of graphic narratives, like as I said in my previous lectures, I discussed about Patua art, I will discuss about several other kinds of Gond art which is there in Bhimayana, various kind of indigenous art that are now being experimented through graphic novel form. So it is not just in, so you cannot say that in its form it is American, European or Japanese, but in the form itself it has also reintroduced or revisited its own art forms and trying to bring its own art form through the graphic narrative and try to match with the storyline, so that the story and the artwork kind of conjoined to produce maximum output for the indigenous audience, for the people living in India, so that they are also familiar with their own artwork. Comics in India before the graphic novel. The Indian comic books most popular beginnings start with Amar Chitra Katha, Immortal Picture Stories, founded by Anant Pai in 1967, that largely concern itself with themes from the Indian heritage. Indrajal comics, ranging from 1964 to 1990, reprinted American newspaper strips such as Lee Fox, The Phantom, and Mandrake the Magician, before launching a successful series featuring Abid Surti's Indian superhero Bahadur. In 1986, Rajkumar Gupta created Raj Comics and began publishing mostly Hindi language titles featuring South Asian superheroes. So these are some of the comics that you have already been familiarized in the previous lectures, that is the lectures from week 2, Amar Chitra Katha, Phantom and Raj Comics. Now we come to how Indian graphic novel appears. What are the visuals of, or what is the image of Indian graphic novel which is marketed in India today. The Indian graphic novel has provided an alternative space to channel voices that have been left out or marginalized from mainstream socio-political cultural discourses. For example, Arijit Singh's River of Story itself, which is considered as the first formal Indian graphic novel, it actually talks about the protests that happened centering around Narmada Dam movement, how people were actually invested in, and what was the Narmada Dam protest, was it all about. This is all, the socio-political issues which do not find voice elsewhere, or which do not find voice elsewhere, or you can also say which find voice elsewhere, but the graphic novel kind of intensifies the voices. It kind of maximizes the voices which are not being heard in the other form, but when you produce a graphic novel on it, the visuals as well as the verbal add to the intensity of the protest which is not being heard elsewhere. Most graphic novels in India are invested in realistic representations of everyday life, unlike the fantasy-driven extraordinary adventures found in superhero comics. So there's a diverse landscape of Indian comics. There are comics on socio-political issues, there are also comics on the everyday life. For example, Amrita Patil's Curry, which is a very, day-to-day, which actually kinds of narrates the everyday life of her female protagonist Curry. Arijit Singh's River of Stories, a self-published work with funding support from the NGO Kalpavriksha, is considered to be the first graphic novel in India. Singh's work emerges from his own activism. It is explicitly the work of a single artist rather than a factory-like team. So unlike the usual graphic novel form where you have a writer and an illustrator and a designer and then an editor, actually, the River of Stories was written and compiled by Arijit Singh himself. River of Story explicitly announces its ambition by treating a serious topic, the controversial construction of Sardar Sarovar Dam on the Narmada River, identified by the local name Rewa in the book, in Gujarat, and the displacement of the Adivasi population following it. The text will be discussed at length in the latter week. Sen's work has close resemblance to Will Eisner's work, such as A Contract with God and other Testament stories, in terms of seriousness of form and content. So it is very much closer to Will Eisner's first graphic novel, A Contract with God. Both Sen's and Eisner's work suggest novellas or short stories rather than the typically longer novel. So they graphic novels, as I said in the previous lecture also, why people prefer a graphic novel, or what was one of the reasons why graphic novel was required as a form, is that people don't have time in this day-to-day world, in the busy schedule that they have, to read lengthy, voluminous, huge novels or novellas. Rather than graphic novel gives an opportunity to gloss over the narrative, to know the entire story very much in detail, along with the visual imagery, appealing visual imageries, so that in very brief and few pages, around 32 or 42 pages, because the voluminous the work will be, the more expensive the graphic novel will be, and the less buyers it would have. But it all depends. If you are a lover of graphic novel, if you actually like reading, then the pricing comes secondary. Indian graphic novel. The protagonists of many Indian graphic novels are young urban adults, much like their creators and presumably their primary audiences. Following Sen, the first Indian graphic novel to receive widespread attention was Sarnath Banerjee's slice of urban life narrative, Corridor. The widespread attention garnered by Corridor partly relies with its publication by Penguin Books India, which could provide the level of advertising and distribution needed for the larger dissemination of the text. So, a graphic novel would also fail where so much of money has been put into producing it, glossy papers, visuals, paying the artists, paying the writers, and so many people, because as I said, it is a team that comes together. So, what you have is that, unless and until you are advertising or marketing your product properly, probably the graphic novel wouldn't even see the stands, wouldn't even see the bookshops where it is ultimately meant to be sold. So, Corridor has a complex narrative as the text moves among the half dozen complex characters and between Delhi and Calcutta, and the work is also visually inventive, shifting between stark black and white and colored sections. As you can see, these are the shots from Corridor, and it is very dense, and there is no panel, if you would say. The panel-like structure which was very much there in the comics has gone. It is a full page drawing where you see the man sitting in a room in his library where the books are kept. It's all line drawing. You can see it's all line drawing, and man sitting with a book in his library or in his reading room, and it is drawn. The page has completely taken the form of the illustration, and there are no panels, there are no gutter spaces there. As you can see, it's only the speech balloon which is there in the page. Sarnath Banerjee and his other works. Banerjee's subsequent graphic novels, The Barn Owl's Wondrous Capers and The Harappa Files, have established him as a key figure in contemporary Indian comics. The Barn Owl's Wondrous Capers travels boldly through time, ranging across centuries. Just as I said, what Emma Dawson was also saying, that time becomes an essential factor in Indian graphic novels, travels through time, post-millennial India, pre-millennial India, a sense for nostalgia, time to go back, desire to relive the past. It is all being experimented through Sarnath Banerjee's novels. To reinvent the legend of the wandering Jew, in this case tracing the search for an elusive book, or elusive past, you can say, a scandalous account of the British administrators of colonial Calcutta. The Harappa Files is fragmentary as a narrative, and the thrust remains in comparing the India of now with the India of then, in highlighting the issues faced with post-liberalized India. Banerjee was a key founding member of the short-lived Phantomville publication to produce and promote additional graphic novels by other Indian creators. So just as we see very regional and very focused publishing houses coming up and supporting the production of new graphic novels and being a part of the graphic novel publication industry. The company released The Believers in 2006, which was written by Abdul Sultan PP, and the illustrations which were made by Partho Sen Gupta. Kashmir Pending is one of the notable releases by Phantomville publication. Both The Believers and Kashmir Pending draws upon journalistic models. Other important titles in Indian graphic novels also include Vishwajyoti Ghosh's Delhi Calm, which is a graphic narrative based on the Indian emergency of 1975 during Indira Gandhi's years. Vishwajyoti Ghosh's Delhi Calm, published by HarperCollins India in 2010, explores the emergency period imposed by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in the mid-1970s. Delhi Calm presents itself as an explicit historical investigation in its visual style as well as its narrative. Ghosh also stresses on the psychic impact of the historical event of the emergency as it affects the characters of the novel. Again, through all these slides, I've been discussing what are the different trajectories in which Indian graphic novels have been written, tribal and environmental issues being talked about by Arijit Singh's River of Stories. Then we have the nostalgia, themes of nostalgia, remembrance and bring back the past by Sarnath Banerjee. Then we have revisiting history through Vishwajyoti Ghosh's This Side, That Side, which is another graphic novel by him based on the partition, and Delhi Calm, which is on the Indian emergency years of during the time of Indira Gandhi. And we also have a separate set of women graphic novelists in India whose stories differ from the mainstream stories written by male graphic novelists, as I would say. Amrita Patil's Curry, published by HarperCollins India in 2008, is most likely India's first lesbian-themed graphic novel. Curry effectively balances the vivid first-person prose narrative of a young woman's survival of a breakup with an American named Susan Lush, with panels and dialogue balloons that clash as often as they mesh with the handwritten text they accompany. Patil also alternates between muted black and white and carefully selected color images in a work that increasingly illuminates the protagonist Curry's intimate relationship with Mumbai, where the story is set. The Indian graphic novel has also been experimental, as it has allowed for more fantastic or work that often verges on non-narrative tendencies. One key example would be the cryptic dystopian work Moonward, or the Stories from Hala Hala by Apu Pin. So we are going to do all these graphic novels in detail in the upcoming weeks. Week by week, we'll pick up on at least 2 to 3 graphic novels as per the theme of the week, and how these graphic novels have come to occupy or intend to make an important space, create an important space for themselves. Populated by strange creatures that are simultaneously cute and horrific, Apu Pin's comics offer Indian readers a fantasy world that is often as disturbing as the society depicted in more realistic and socially engaged graphic novels. So, Curry and Moonwards, these are the cover book images, cover pages. Recent and future developments of the Indian graphic novel. Works by Indian diaspora have gained a considerable success and are emerging globally. The noir-inflected crime saga Mumbai Confidential by writer Saurav Mahapatra and artist Vivek Shinde represents a good example. Products of the Indian diaspora attempts to infuse comics designed for international audiences with exotic Indian characters and content while adhering to mainstream genre conventions. Comic conventions and Indian comic festivals provide a major outlet, not only highlighting local comic activity and artists but establishing productive international connections. Organizations such as World Comics India, founded by cartoonist Sharat Sharma in the 1990s, remains devoted to supporting grassroots comics creation through collaborative workshops termed Comic Power, for non-professionals that are held in rural India as well as in other countries. So Comic Power also is one of the agencies or is one of the organization which also helps in drawing underground comics, which we discussed in week 2. Educational graphic novels produced by Delhi's Sarai Media Lab, such as Tinker Soldier Tap by Bhagwati Prasad and Amitabh Kumar, illustrates the lived experience of media transformation, such as the arrival of VCR in India in the 1980s. Bhagwati Prasad's The Water Cookbook dealt with peri-urban sustainability and daily life in Ghaziabad. Graphic novels have ventured into the realm of social engagement and pedagogy, basing on a newer generation of Indian creators as well as activists on comics, enabling the graphic narrative as a valuable form of visual and verbal communication. In conclusion, in a relatively brief period, the Indian graphic novel has emerged and developed as a significant form of social, political, and historical inquiry, as well as a medium allowing for intimate and even experimental narratives. Like its more numerous Western counterparts, it has also relied upon remarkably diverse range of visual styles and compositional formats, extending from rough pencil drawing to slick computer created comics with a notable incorporation of collage techniques. So if you also see, apart from Amrita Patil's Curry, if you also see, there are few other graphic novels that Amrita Patil has written or drawn is Adi Parv. So I mean, if you see, it is in the hardbound format, and if you see the visuals of Adi Parv, it's completely, even the entire page, both sides of the drawing is running from one page to another page. So it's even the pages are not in totality, even one page drawing is not there. You cannot visualize or analyze or infer an image by seeing one page, but the drawings are running at least covering 2-3 pages. So you have to gain the meaning, you have to make the meaning in totality. So there is also an experimentation in the form, apart from the indigenous artworks that exist. These kind of experimental artworks where the sketch does not just remain in the on only one page of what the book page look like, but it actually travels from one page to another, and you have to flip the page and then see the drawing again, then again flip the page. So these are humongous, very large drawings, and you have to visualize. You also have to make an inference that how it would have looked like on if it was drawn on one page. So those kind of drawings also exist, which are experimental in nature. The graphic novel in India has over time demonstrated its ability to compete with more established literary as well as popular narrative forms while establishing and exploring its often unique aesthetic capabilities.
So, in the end, I want to highlight that what Krikumar proposes is that Indian graphic novel is a unique mix of mythology, is a unique mix of tradition, is a unique mix of maybe various kinds of indigenous arts or folk art forms that have emerged from India. For example, like Patua art, or what I quote him while he says, "Thus, while Indian comics may appear to draw upon native, even ancient South Asian visual and narrative traditions, such as the scrolls of Chitrakatha, the narrative frescoes of Ajanta, or modern media, including poster art and popular Indian cinema, the Indian graphic novel often asserts its status as distinctly Indian contribution to what is simultaneously emphasized as a fully contemporary and increasingly international network of comics creators and consumers." Unquote. So, what he is trying to say here is that Indian comics or the Indian graphic novel, which is subsequently emerging from Indian comics, is a unique amalgamation of tradition, where mythological stories are being revived, where Ajanta pictures, where the scrolls from Chitrakatha style of art, or the poster art, or even the Indian cinema has its influences on. But at the same time, this graphic novel or Indian comics started to draw from the international artwork, art exhibitions, or from the international artists, thus trying to mimic at some level or copy initially at some level and subsequently emerging with a style of their own, which was not only unique in their perspective, but it kind of produced a montage like effect. It kind of produced a collage effect where tradition and modernity were visible side by side, could be experienced side by side through the form of Indian graphic novels.
Thank you.